Well, there's the gold. It doesn't look like that much initially, but you got to remember, this is a big 3-liter beaker. That gold is covering a lot of the bottom of the beaker. So there's a fair amount there. Alright, picking up where we left off in part 1, the second extraction on the fines is done, and I'm going to combine the liquid from the 2 extractions here, and then we're going to get into the sulfuric acid stripping cell and get it set up and running. So here we go. Alright, the second extraction on the fine stuff over here appears to be done. There does not seem to be any more reaction going on in this beaker. But I really think we got the bulk of it the first time around. I just did the second time just to be thorough. And we did see a bit of a reaction, so I think it was worth the effort. I'm going to add it to this stuff over here, just like I did the first time around. Only the liquid, though. I'm going to rinse the solids and pour the rinse water in here, too. Then we should have all the gold from the bond wires and the ceramics in this big beaker over here. Let me get some distilled water, rinse this stuff a little bit. Get all the pregnant solution out of it. And add that in over here. I'll give it another rinse too, because it's still coming off kind of yellow-green. Want to make sure I get all of the pregnant solution out of it. There we go. Okay. We're going to let this stuff continue to cook until I don't see any more reaction. Haven't decided yet whether I think this is going to need a second extraction or not. But what I have decided is, since this is R&D for the future, where I'm going to be processing a whole lot more of Johnny's chips, I have decided that I'm going to have to do a nitric acid extraction on this stuff before I go straight to Aqua Regia, because there was just too much base metal in here. I mean, look how green this liquid is. There was a lot more base metal there than I thought. Iron and nickel. Now, not only from bits being knocked off of the Alloy 42 IC chip legs, but as the ceramics were bouncing around inside the Mighty Mill, I'm sure bits of the shackles and bits of the inner chamber of the Mighty Mill were spalled off too and mixed in with the stuff. So there's a lot more base metal in here than I thought. So next time we're going to add an extra step just to get rid of some of that with a nitric acid extraction before we go to Aqua Regia. I think that will make much less dirty Aqua Regia, which will give us a much cleaner first gold drop. So that's my new plan. Once again, we're pivoting to react to the realities of the situation as we find them. Okay, I'm going to let that continue to do its thing, although it looks like it slowed down a lot. But I do still see bubbling, so we're going to let it continue. Alrighty, I think I've got just about everything I need here to try the reverse electrolysis. I got my ancient battery charger over here. It is capable of 10 amps at 12 volts. It'll actually go higher if I put it on the start setting, but I don't think I want to try that. I'm not sure I want to put that much current through this stuff. So let's see. I'm going to hook the positive terminal. The positive terminal up to the basket over here. The negative terminal up to the lead. Okay. So I need to put some concentrated sulfuric acid in there. I'm using the same liquid lightning drain opener I use for making poor man's nitric acid, or for when I need some sulfuric acid in one of my chemical processes, like dropping lead out of aqua regia. I'm going to put that much in there. All right, so I've never done this before. I've only seen it done. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let's see if we can get the meter on the battery charger in the field of view too. So the battery charger is plugged in, but so far there is no current flow. Not really, although I do see some stuff coming off of the basket I made. Let me put in some of these beat up Kovar lids with the gold plating on them. I don't really see the current going up any, but I am seeing bubbling around the cathode here. Put the rest of these in. Uh-oh, one missed. Okay, so those are all in. Let's see if I can grab the one missed the basket. It is in. Sort of stir them around a little bit. I was really expecting to see more current flowing. It's not really even showing up on the meter. Okay, now we've got a reaction going. I think something wasn't making good contact. Maybe the clip on the cathode wasn't. But now we've got a good reaction around the cathode. We're actually jumped up about 4 amps here. And yeah, I see a lot of black stuff coming off of the plated stuff in here. Oh yeah. Let me move the camera and zoom in so you can see a little better. Yeah, see that cloud of black stuff coming off the basket in here? That's going to be the gold plating coming off of all those little Kovar lids in there. All right, so it's working. The current on the battery charger has dropped down to about 3.5 amps, maybe 3. So as the gold comes off, I expect the current flow to drop. But all right, so this is good. I guess my clips are a little rusty. Maybe they just weren't making good contact. I might have to file them a bit just to make sure in the future they make good contact, especially if I need to recharge my car battery. But yeah, this is actually working. Great. So Johnny, we can recover all of the gold from your IC chips without having to use gallons of nitric acid. I do have gallons of nitric acid, and I'll put a link in the upper right to where I get it these days, but you know, I'd rather not waste it if I don't have to. So this is good. This is working good. Nice. I still see some gold plating in there, so we're just going to let that continue to work. I imagine that the current on the meter over here will drop down pretty low when all the gold plating is gone. So we'll just let it go. When I do get a whiff of sulfur dioxide off of it, but I have a fan at my back blowing that way, so only if I stick my head too close do I smell it. So I think we're okay. But yeah, that cloud of black powder in there is really expanding. Nice. Very nice. All right, let's go back over to the fume hood while this is working and see what's going on over there. All righty, I think it's time to denox this stuff. The reaction has died down to pretty much nothing. But I know I was very heavy-handed with the nitric acid, so I'm sure there's a lot of nitric still in there. I've got my usual saturated solution of sulfamic acid here. Now, I was talking a little bit ago about using sulfuric acid to drop any lead in here, and there's probably lead in there from the solder on the legs of the IC chips. A lot of that solder probably got chipped off and is in there, and it went into solution with the aqua regia. Well, we want to get the lead out. Well, sulfamic acid, a little bit, stir it up some. I am surprised I am not seeing more of a reaction. But sulfamic acid, when it reacts with unreacted nitric acid, produces some sulfuric acid. Yeah, I'm not seeing much of a reaction, just a little bit. Maybe I wasn't, well, there it goes. Maybe I wasn't as heavy-handed with the nitric acid as I thought I was with this amount of material. And it boiled for quite a while. I might have boiled a lot of it off. All right, but we're gonna call this stuff enox for sure. All right, gonna let this cool down, and we'll filter it and drop whatever gold it contains. It's gonna be an ugly, dirty gold drop, but what can you do? Yeah, I definitely need to run a nitric acid extraction on this stuff before I go to aqua regia in the future. And speaking of extraction, I might do a second extraction on this stuff, just to make sure it got all the gold out of it, just like I did on the finer material. So that might be worthwhile. All right, so let me get back over to the sulfuric acid cell. Once that's done, I'll move it out of the way, and we'll set up to filter this stuff and drop whatever gold it contains. I'm pretty sure most of our gold's in here, but we'll get what's on the rest of this, the gold-plated stuff too, just to be thorough. All right, the current in the cell had really dropped off a lot until I stirred it. You have a look at what's going on in here. That's still got some gold on it. That's still got some gold on it. Well, one has gold, one doesn't. Let's see if I can get the one that one's got gold on it. I'm fishing around blind down here. Looks like we got one with gold and one without. Yeah, as the gold goes away, the current drops off, but if I stir it up, it comes back. That one looks like there's no gold left on it. Put that in a beaker of water over there. That one's still got gold. Okay. So it might be easier. Yeah, I can pull the basket out. Fish out stuff that's had all the gold removed. And then that's still got some gold on it. That's just got a little bit, but all right. And I got powdered gold on my tips of my forceps there. Okay. Current flowing again. Let's see if we can get the rest of that gold removed. And then once all these lids are done, I'll put in all these legs that I've got in here. And we'll see how they do. But so far, I'm pretty happy with how this is working. Pretty darn happy. It's easy. I like it when it's easy and it just works. All right, this cell's been running for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes now. Let's see here. 48C. So it's not getting too hot. It's definitely above ambient, though, which is about 27 C. So it's warming up, but it's not too hot yet. So that's good. Stir this stuff around a little bit more. Every time I stir it, the current tends to go up. So it tends to fall off a little bit when it's just sitting here running. So yeah, you see the bubbling over here now. All right, it's working good. I'm just going to let it go until it looks like I got all of the gold off of those lids. Then we'll move on to doing the legs. All right, I'm not quite done with the lids, but I am learning. I'm learning. I've got a lot of the lids in here. They are stripped, but there's still some in there. Some of the lids seem to have thicker gold plating on them than others, and they're taking longer, but I've also found it doesn't pay to overload the basket. It seems like only the lids in direct contact with the copper basket are the ones that are getting stripped the fastest. The ones that are 2 or 3 layers up and not touching the copper basket directly, not much happens with them. So obviously there's not a good electrical connection between the lids and each other. You know, there's a good direct electrical connection if they're sitting in the basket touching it, but if they're touching other lids and not the basket, it doesn't seem to work so well. But we're almost done. I've got enough of the lids out of there now that what's left in there is pretty much a single layer. So I think it will be done pretty darn quick. And boy, look how black the sulfuric acid's getting. We're going to be getting more gold off these things than I thought. Although, you know, it is plating. So I don't think there's that much there. All right. Almost done with the lids. All right. Looks like I forgot to hit record, but I pulled the empty anode basket out of here. And I rinsed all of the black powder off of it into the beaker that I've got the stripped lids in, because I did pull some of the black powder over every time I took them out too. So I'll filter this liquid and get that gold. I've got the anode basket in this bucket of water here after spritzing it with some tap water over this. I put it in the bucket just to prevent it from further dissolving away. Maybe I can reuse it next time. So what do I do with the acid now? Do I want to store it for next time? Because I really didn't strip that much stuff off of it. Or do I want to try and capture all the gold that's in there and add it in with what's in the fume hood? So we can get, you know, an accurate yield on this stuff I'm doing. Although I don't know how important an accurate yield is, because we've got such a huge mix of chips, the next batch isn't going to be the same. Oh, decisions. Well, I'll think about it and start cleaning up the bench here so we can get the liquid out of the fume hood and filter it. And I'll think about it while I'm doing that. Maybe I'll come to some decision. Alrighty, so I guess I've decided I'm going to try and filter the gold out of this acid and reuse the acid in the future. We'll see how that works. Now, I can't use a paper filter. The acid will just destroy it. I can't use a cotton ball. The acid will just destroy it. But looks like cotton, but it's not. It's ceramic fiber. It's the same stuff I make my foundry furnace out of. So I'm thinking if I stick this down in the neck of the funnel, that should hopefully filter out the gold and let the acid through. And then I can put that little piece of ceramic fiber right into some aqua regia and dissolve the acid out of it. That's the theory anyway. We'll see how well it works. The acid's not coming through completely clean. I know some of that gold is very, very fine. It's probably going to go through, but that's okay. I'm going to reuse this acid again for doing the same thing. May throw our yield off by a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, but at least the gold's not going to waste. All right, so it's working. We get the rest of this acid in here. Once all, oh yeah, look at all that gold there. There may be more gold in this stuff than I thought. I don't know. Can I get that lucky? Well, once all the acid goes through into this bottle, I'll replace the bottle probably with this beaker over here and rinse the rest of the gold out of this Corningware dish. I don't want to dilute the acid with rinse water, so we'll just let that go. Let me get this stuff out of the way, and we will work on vacuum filtering the stuff in the fume hood so we can give it a second treatment with aqua. Okay, while we're waiting for the acid to filter through, let's get this stuff filtered off. It does leave a film on the inside of the beaker and on my stir rod, but I found on the small beaker where I did the fine stuff that Windex took it off. Nothing else seemed to. And I'll be keeping the bits of paper towel I use for cleaning these beakers with my rags, just in case there's some gold in that stuff. Well, let's get this stuff filtered so we can give it a second treatment. Coming through nice and clear, and it's a reasonably good color too. Lost a lot of the greenness it had. Or don't get me wrong, it's still green. It's just not like dark lime green Kool-Aid, which is good. So after I get all the liquid through, I'm going to put the solids back in the fume hood and we'll give it a second treatment, and we'll start on all the little legs too. Get them in another beaker and start giving them nitric acid treatments. That's my new plan. This is plan A, B, C, D maybe. We're rolling with the punches and changing things up as necessary, but we'll get there in the end. And this is all R&D for doing the rest of those chips. All right, so here we are back at the fume hood. I've got the legs and bits of ceramic there I need to treat, and I need to give this stuff a second treatment of aqua. So in goes some muriatic acid. I'm not going to put in as much as last time because I think we probably got the bulk of the gold out of it. Just enough to submerge everything good. Yeah, that beaker is just a mess, let me tell you. All right, let's get some nitric acid in there. And I'm not just going to dump it in this time because, well, like I said, I think we got the bulk of the gold out of it, so we're going to be a little more conservative. Although, we seem to have used up all the nitric acid last time. That's another reason I want to do a second extraction on this stuff. Because if all the nitric acid got used up in the aqua, that tells me there might still be gold in there that is undissolved. So, get that going, put some heat to it, speed things up. Over here, I'm going to put some distilled water in here. I'll put a fair amount because we're going to dissolve a lot of base metals. Now I am going to pour the nitric acid in there, at least for this initial one. I may add it drop-wise afterwards if necessary. Oh yeah. Now we're cooking. Not even hot. Put a little heat to that too. Huh. Well, we had a pretty strong initial reaction, but then a whole lot of nothing. Well, a little bit of bubbling. We'll see what happens when it warms up. Interesting. Well, we'll see what happens when it warms up. I'm not going to be impatient and dump a bunch more nitric acid on it yet. With my luck, it'll just result in an explosive boil over, which I don't want. So we'll let these go, let them heat up, and see what happens. Well, it took a little while to get going, but we have a pretty good reaction going on here, and I think I know why the reaction took a little while to get going. The nitric acid isn't going to touch the gold, and those legs are gold plated. They're also heavily tinned on the end where they were unsoldered from the boards, most of them. So we've got a milky suspension of metastatic acid forming in there, which I was kind of expecting to see too. But as we chew through the metastatic acid and get to the ends of the legs, which aren't gold plated, and places where the gold plating has been knocked off by the Mighty Mill, we are starting to get a pretty good reaction and some brown orange fumes in there. Over here, yeah, we got a pretty good reaction going on. You really can't see it though because the beaker's so dirty. So we are definitely getting something else out of those ceramic bits down there. I think we got the bulk of the gold out, but we're definitely getting something else out. So 2 extractions was a good idea. All right, let these go back to cooking. Neither of them is anywhere near done yet. Well, it's about 15 minutes later. This got really foamy. In fact, I turned the heat down because foam got up to about here and I'm afraid it was going to boil over. But look at the liquid. It's gone from sort of milky white to brown. That's because we're chewing through the iron in those alloy 42 legs now. That's rust. That's what you see in there is rust. So the legs are seriously getting chewed up now. So that's exactly what I wanted. We're getting rid of that base metal. I'll put a little bit more nitric acid in there when this reaction is done. And keep that up until I don't see any more reaction. And then we'll pour off this liquid full of base metal here. Maybe rinse the stuff a couple of times and give it the same aqua regia treatment that's getting. That, by the way, is still going, but it looks like it's slowing down. So, everything's going just as I planned for a change. Okay, I would say this stuff has done reacting. So I'm going to pour off this dirty, rusty liquid and give it a couple of rinses with distilled water. And based on what I see in there, I'll decide whether it needs another nitric acid extraction. That is nasty. All right, let me get that cleaned up. We'll take a look at it and decide whether it needs another extraction or not. Yeah, I still see a whole lot of base metal in this stuff. So I think I'm going to switch to poor man's nitric. Not only does that save me money over using straight nitric acid, although there's not really enough here to worry about the cost savings, but it's going to give me 2 acids in solution to help attack all that base metal in there. So what the nitric's not attacking, the sulfuric might. So let me get this back in the fume hood, and we will make up some poor man's nitric and see what that does to this stuff. Alright, just like before, we're going to start some distilled water. Yeah, I gave that several rinses, and it's still very rusty. But the nitric acid's not attacking all that base metal, so we'll see what this does. We'll give it a double whammy, some sulfuric acid. And that alone is doing something. Yeah, we got some reaction going there. Okay, I'm making mental notes on everything I'm having to do here. Plus, hey, I'm documenting it on film, so. Alright, so in goes some sodium nitrate. Healthy spoonful here. Oh, look at that. Alright. So I'll let those 2 acids chew on that base metal for a while and see what kind of result that gives me. This stuff over here, I think is done. I'm going to turn the heat off on it. I'm going to mix up my sulfamic acid denoxing solution, and we'll denox that, and we'll filter it. There's still plenty of room in that filter flask, so we'll just run it through the same filter I ran the other stuff through, and get that stuff filtered. So let me mix up my denoxing solution. Oh man, yeah, look at it go. I was basically getting no reaction anymore with just straight nitric, but with the 2 acids together in there, Wow. I see a lot of gold floating in those bubbles too. I don't know if it's showing up to you. But yeah, the gold foils are coming off. This is working great. Okay, note to self, when it comes to dealing with the legs, poor man's Nitric. Works great. Yeah, if you couldn't see the gold from that long shot, there it is. Look at that. I just turned the heat down because this is getting a little bit crazy. I don't want to boil over. That seems to be settling down. Okay, good. Let me get back to mixing up my denoxing solution. Alright, this stuff's still going great guns over here. It's time to get this over here denoxed so we can get it filtered. So, in goes my saturated solution of sulfamic acid. Once again, not a huge reaction. I am surprised. Just a little bit. Alright, this needs to cool down a little bit more, then I can filter it. Right now I think it will dissolve my paper filters. But yeah, okay. We got some bubbling now, so there was some excess nitric in there. I was a lot less heavy-handed this time around, because I know we got most of the gold first time. Okay, look at that. Still going strong. I like it. Look how dark the liquid is again. We are dissolving some serious base metal over there. Nice. Okay, once this cools down, we'll filter it. Alrighty, let's get this stuff filtered. It's certainly a much more reasonable color than the last batch. Going through the same filter. Waste not, want not, right? Okay, I'm going to rinse the debris in there a few times with distilled water and run that water through the filter too. And then, by then we'll probably be pretty full. So I don't know if we'll be able to get any more. I may put this into a much bigger, I may dump this out into one of my big 3-liter beakers and just cover it until we have all of our gold in solution. And we can drop it all together. So, I think there's going to be enough room to get some rinse water through there though, so I will do that. Alright, this stuff seems to be done reacting. I put some more sodium nitrate on it, and I left it on the heat until it was getting dark last night, and then shut it down. And I am pretty sure, based on the amount of gold I see floating in here, that we probably dissolved all the legs. So, okay. I want to test this liquid to see if it has any silver in it before I discard it. Because I think if there was any silver in these chips, this would be the fraction that would probably have it. So, I'm going to pull this out and we'll test it for silver. If there is silver in it, we'll keep this liquid for later silver recovery. If not, well, we'll just discard it as a waste liquid. Alrighty, I'm going to do my usual test for silver here. I've got a little bit of tap water with a splash of hydrochloric acid in it. I'm going to get a little bit of the clear liquid out of here. Put it in there. And there might be just the tiniest trace of silver there. Certainly not enough to bother going after. So we're not going to get a lot of silver out of these chips. Okay. Let me see if I can get this floating gold to sink. And I will decant off this liquid. And give this stuff a couple of rinses, and then we'll go to aqua regia. I may have to filter this liquid because the gold is just floating and it is not sinking. And I'm afraid if I just pour it off, I'm going to lose a lot of gold. So I guess I'm going to have to filter this liquid and throw the filter in. So, all right. Another step. It's never easy. Let me get set up for that. All right, let's filter this waste liquid off. I just want to catch the floating gold. Well, clearly this is going to take a while, so you don't have to watch it. I'll rinse this stuff a couple of times too to get the green liquid out of it. I'm sure that's iron and nickel from the alloy 42 that the legs are made of. So, okay, be back when this is done. All right, let's see if we can get this gold in here into solution. I've got the filter in here that I filtered that green liquid with. In the center of this funnel is the ceramic ball that I used to catch the gold from the electrolytic cell. So there's the gold from that. So just get all the gold in solution here. All right, so let me make some aqua regia and we'll get that dissolving. All right, so in goes some uriatic acid. Got some bubbling. So yeah, we got a vigorous reaction going on. There must be nitrate salts left in there. So we're making aqua regia already, even before I put any nitric acid in there. But I am going to put a little bit. Now everything's cold, and I'm going to leave it cold. For the moment. Put a little bit more. Yeah, that's increasing the reaction. Because what I want to do is I want to put these plastic forceps in there and have the aqua regia dissolve the gold off of them. But if I put them into hot aqua regia, they will probably melt. So I'm going to see if the aqua regia will take the gold off those forceps. And then once that happens, if it happens, I don't know, it might be embedded in the surface. We'll put some heat to it and really get the reaction going. Well, it's only been about 5, maybe 10 minutes. I don't think even that long. Whew. Gold's really seriously going into solution even cold. And hey, look at that. Look at that. Got most of the gold off my forceps. Great. Excellent. I like that. All right. I'm going to put a little heat to it. Let's see if we can speed the process of getting the gold in solution. Nice. And we'll just let that go until it looks like all the gold's in solution. And you know what? I like the color. It's a little muddy, but it's not green. So that tells me that we probably got most of the base metals out of it. Nice. All right. We'll just let it cook for now. All right. It looks to me like everything is in solution over here. That went without a lot of fuss. Turn the heat off. Not that I ever had it up too high. Filter paper's falling apart. All right, so time for denoxing. Here goes my usual saturated solution of sulfamic acid. Oh yeah, this time we've got a lot of extra nitric acid in there. Yeah, I put in way too much for dissolving that little bit of gold. But this will take care of it. Yep. Okay. Okay. So let me get this stuff filtered. I've still got the same filter and I've been using all along, so we'll filter this stuff. We'll add it to the big beaker full of the other filtrate, and then we'll drop the gold. So we're actually getting close to seeing some gold here. All right, let me get set up for filtration. Yeah, I've been using the same filter in here the whole time. Hey, waste not, want not, right? I think it's still got a little life in it for this little bit of liquid we got to filter here. Of course, got a lot of paper pulp in this and ceramic. Like there's the big wad of ceramic right there. We'll probably plug it up pretty bad. There's the debris in the bottom, glass, ceramic, who knows what. The heck. I'll just put it all in there and rinse the pregnant solution out of all of it a few times. And finally, look at that. We got something coming through that looks like a decent gold solution. Gonna add it to that green stuff there. Okay. Well, we'll just drop it all together. You know, why drop gold 2, 3, 4 times? We'll just drop it once. Well, we might have to drop it twice to clean it up, because I think it's going to be an ugly gold drop. This wouldn't be, but this probably will be. Okay. Once this is done filtering and I've washed the color out of the filter up here, added this to that, I'll meet you in the fume hood. We'll drop the gold. Alrighty, wow, my beaker almost wasn't big enough for all this liquid. If I do a larger batch in the future, I'll probably have to break it up into several gold drops. Since I don't have any room in this beaker for adding iron sulfate to it, we're doing it with SMB. Stump Out by Bonide contains sodium metabisulfite, which will and is dropping the gold. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One more spoonful just for good measure. Okay. We will let that settle and see just how much gold winds up on the bottom of that beaker and what the consistency of it is. I would not be surprised if it's colloidal or semi-colloidal. That's a pretty dirty mixture, except for the last few hundred milliliters that went into it. We'll see what we get. Alright, I left this stuff overnight to settle. The liquid is very dark, so it's hard to see, but it looks like there's a thick layer of gold on the bottom. There was a lot of very fine gold floating on top, but I spritzed it with my distilled water sprayer to get it to sink. So it looks like it's semi-colloidal, which I was afraid of. So what I will likely do is siphon the liquid off, and then we'll redissolve it and reprecipitate it, and it should come out a whole lot cleaner. And then we can dry it out and get a weight on it. So let me get to siphoning, and I'll show you what's on the bottom of the beaker after I get this liquid siphoned off. You've seen me siphon before. I won't waste the time on this video for that. I'll just show you what's on the bottom when I'm done. Well, there's the gold. After siphoning off most of that green liquid, I couldn't get it all because I didn't want to suck up any gold. So it doesn't look like that much initially, but you got to remember, this is a big 3-liter beaker. That gold is covering a lot of the bottom of the beaker. So there's a fair amount there. Let me get this into a smaller beaker and I'll redissolve it and we'll reprecipitate it, and I'll bet we'll get a much cleaner product the second time around. All right, the gold in here actually doesn't look that bad. I mean, it's not super colloidal. I mean, it's not super great either. I'm tempted to not even re-refine it and just put it with the rest of Johnny's what I call dirty gold, which is gold from one refining. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and re-refine it. Since there's some liquid left in there, I'm going to use the rest of this hydrochloric acid jug, a little bit more than I normally would. And there's no reason to be heavy-handed with the nitric anymore. So we'll just put in as much as it takes to dissolve this gold. There was about maybe 2.5 milliliters. There's another maybe milliliter or a little more. And I'm going to leave it at that for now. And I see bubbling already. So let me cover it up. Put a little bit of heat to it, not too much. And we'll get that stuff dissolved again. I'll put a little bit more nitric acid in it if necessary. It might be to get that gold in solution. Okay, so looks like the gold's all in solution. Just for full disclosure, I did put another about a milliliter of nitric acid in it off camera because it looked like it had stopped and there was still gold in there. So that extra milliliter got it done. All right, so we're gonna put in my usual saturated solution of sulfamic acid. Oh yeah, that's gonna denox it. It's also gonna provide a little bit of sulfuric acid as it breaks down to get any lead to come out of solution that might be in there. I like the color. The color is so much nicer than it was the first time. So I think we're going to get some much better looking gold this second time around. Okay. Let me get set up to filter this stuff. It needs to cool down a little bit too. It's quite hot. And then we'll filter it and then we can drop the gold again. Okay, let's get this stuff filtered. Had a chance to cool down some. My pump still sounds like it's dying, but it seems to be holding on, so. I'll use it until its last gasp. That is a good looking solution. I think we're going to get some really clean gold out of that. That is nice looking. Yeah, I think I learned my lesson on this. I think what I need to do is I need to put all the different fractions through poor man's nitric acid. And the double whammy of sulfuric acid and nitric acid does a really good job on cleaning up the base metals in there. So that's, note to self, that's when I go do another batch of these, everything gets poor man's nitric. It'll save me a lot of money anyway. Over using, nitric acid, plus it seems to work better. I think this has been a good R&D session. I've learned a lot, figured out a lot of stuff, got a game plan going forward. So let's get this gold dropped, weighed, calculate a yield, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the stuff. All right, I'll finish getting this filtered, and then we'll drop this stuff in the fume hood. Okay, let's drop some gold. Some nice clean gold this time, I'm thinking. Got the stump out again. Gonna spoon some in. Look at that. That's all it took right there. Nice. Very nice. we'll let that stuff settle and see what we've got. Well, would you look at that? Got all our gold settled out. I've done a stannous chloride test on it. All the gold has dropped out of solution. So I'm going to do my usual thing. I'm going to siphon off the vast bulk of this liquid, try not to suck up any gold when I get to the bottom. And we'll start giving this some cleanup boils. Clean it up as best I can, then we'll dry it out and weigh it. Alrighty, there's the first of the cleanup boils. I'm going to give it at least 2 more boils. I'll decant this liquid off through a filter to catch any superfine gold that might be floating, but it looks like the gold's all staying down on the bottom. That is a good sign that we got a good gold drop. So great. So okay, I'll decant this off and give it 2 more boils, then we'll start drying it out so we can weigh it. Alrighty, there's the gold drying out after 3 boils. As soon as it gets dry, I'll weigh it and we'll calculate a yield. Should be interesting. Stay tuned. Alright, the gold is dried out. Time to weigh it and find out just how much gold this long and elaborate process produced. I learned a lot. I learned that poor man's nitric acid works better than straight nitric acid. I think I'll be using that a lot when I tackle the bulk of Johnny's IC chips. Of course, it was dead calm, and now that I try to get a weight, the wind comes up. .71 grams. 3.71 grams. Now, I was going to calculate yield, and I can't remember how much we started out with. I will have to go check my notes, and then I can calculate the yield. All right, doing a little back-of-the-envelope calculation, we started out with 621 grams of those dual inline gold-plated ceramic IC chips. Then we got 3.71 grams of gold in the end. That's about a 0.6% yield, which I think is not bad considering how much of that weight was ceramic, and that ceramic was heavy. Plus there was a lot of metal there. You know, alloy 42 and cobar. Yeah, so I think 0.6% is not too bad. And let's see, as of today's gold price, which has actually come down a little bit, but 3.71 grams is worth $478. So that's not too shabby. All right, I'm going to add this to the rest of the gold I've collected from Johnny's stuff so far. That repository is getting pretty fat. And now I know exactly, well, I wouldn't say exactly because I haven't tried every type of chip he has, but I think I know all the processes I'm going to need to go through on all his different kinds of chips to get the gold out of them. And there's going to be a lot more gold in there because we just did a fraction of his, what was it, 7+ kilos of chips here. So I'm thinking there's ounces in there. So anyway, I'm going to do some more of these videos on getting the gold out of Johnny's chips. Now, I'd like you to leave a comment and let me know, because I don't want to be too repetitive. You know, I don't want to do the same video over and over and over again, because you guys will get tired of it. So I was thinking about just doing some highlights of different types of chips. Let me know if you like that idea, or if you want to see the whole process, beginning to end. It'll be a lot quicker and easier than this, because there won't be as much R&D involved, and I'll pare the videos down so they aren't, you know, 2-parters or 2 hours of video. But leave me a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see in this process. All right, well, I'm pretty happy with how this all turned out. If you guys are happy with this video, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to see future videos. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching this video. Bye.